Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for attending tonight. My name is Robin Young, and we are the New Beginnings divorce group. The group was created really to empower women who are experiencing this huge life transition, help to give them the resources that they need to get through it more productively. We have a team here of 5 experts in their various fields to provide some support and resources for you tonight. The topic is gray divorce. Women over 50 who are going through a divorce, there's some really interesting statistics around that, which I will share with you right now. So the gray divorce trend is rising. Divorce rates for couples who are 50 and over, the age 50 and over have doubled since the 90s, and those for age 65 and older, they've tripled, if you can believe it. Women who divorce after 50 experience a large drop in standard of living compared to 21% drop for men, so 45% for women drop. So we're here to change that. Part of our goal is to change those statistics. On average, individuals going through a gray divorce see a 50% immediate decline in their wealth. And again, I think a lot of this is women don't often get the support they need throughout the process to get the fair settlements that will help them live comfortably on the other side. So we're here to help you and to direct you to the people that you might need to get empowered around your divorce and make it more successful for you. So I think tonight we are going to do a short presentation followed by a Q&A. So please, if you have questions, you can put them. I think we're doing it in the Q&A section. So you can do it during the presentation, or you can wait to the end and put Q&A in at that point. So we're going to do a quick introduction of each of the panelists, and then we'll jump into the presentation. So again, my name is Robin Young. I'm the president of North Star Financial Planning. We're a fiduciary wealth management firm here in New England, Southern New Hampshire, serving clients throughout the United States. And then I'm going to pass it over to Barb Shigog.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you could join us. My name is Barb Shigog, and I am on the financial side of the divorce planning. I work with clients pre-divorce if they're thinking about divorce and would like to know what would I get during the divorce, and to a certain extent post-divorce too. But hopefully I transition them over to Robin. So and help them on their way. So again, I cover the financial side. I am a certified divorce financial analyst. I have my CPA, so I can, I don't do taxes, but I like to make sure from a tax standpoint, we look at settlements, and I'm a certified financial analyst. So cover all your investments. So with that, I'll hand it over to Kate.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Morneau. I have a law firm in Nashua, based in Nashua, but we handle cases throughout New Hampshire and settlements in Massachusetts. We focus on really working together, helping you solve your disputes outside of court, so through mediation and collaborative divorce. We also have estate planning, which is also an important part of after your divorce, making sure you have all of your ducks in a row. So I'm excited to talk to you guys tonight about gray divorce, some really unique issues surrounding that. So pass you over to Laura.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Laura Gamache. I'm part of Gamache Real Estate Group of Keller Williams. I service all of New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And a large piece of my, in this kind of role, is helping and assisting a lot of people with their largest asset, which is their home. So giving a value so they can really decide what's best moving forward and what just makes the most sense. So definitely here to help and answer any questions evolved around that. And I'll chat with you guys all more, and then I'll pass it over to Renee.
Thanks, Laura. Welcome, everybody. I'm Renee Guidaboni. I am a residential mortgage lender. I'm also a CDLP, which is a certified divorce lending professional. So I work in the divorce space every day. I am licensed in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, but I can really help you in any state. My team and I can work anywhere. So I will pass it back over to Robin. You're on mute, Robin.
I just saw that. Yeah, so sorry. So we're going to, I think, launch into the program with Barb Shagog, who will help you start thinking about the financial process as you're considering your settlement options.
Great, thank you. Can you guys see the screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the financial complexities of a gray divorce. And, a lot of times people feel like, oh, it's, we don't have children to worry about. That's one less thing. So from that standpoint, definitely a gray divorce could be less emotional. But from a financial standpoint, you've had time and there's developed a lot more complexities within a settlement agreement. And so again, it's you don't have kids to try to negotiate. You think it's going to be an easier divorce, but there's really a lot from a financial standpoint to think about. And that's kind of what I want to leave with you today is to really think about, some of these financial aspects that, aren't surface, but I wanted to point them out. I think the biggest challenge and people don't realize is the Social Security and how much a divorce impacts your Social Security, especially if you have one party or one spouse that has chosen to leave the workforce, give up their career, and take care of the children. So the way that Social Security works is the higher earner has paid into Social Security and can start receiving Social Security anywhere from ages 62 to 70. The spouse can receive half of that benefit. So it does not impact the working spouse's Social Security. So, and that's if you've been married 10 years or more. So, this is something that people don't take into consideration. They may divide the assets evenly, but you're automatically, if you're a non-working spouse, right out of the gate, you're only getting half of the Social Security your ex-spouse will get if they were the working spouse. So just to put some context in numbers, I took somebody's Social Security that had been maximizing. They've been paying, at the highest rate for the last couple years. They would typically get, let's say, $45,000 a year. The non-working spouse would get half of that, or $22,000 a year. So if you started taking Social Security at 67 and you live to 85, over time, the working spouse will receive $411,000 more in Social Security benefits than the non-working spouse. So I will say if something happens to the spouse and they pass, you would get then their benefits, but I'm not advising you to consider that option. I just wanted to point that out, that it's something that I don't feel right now is considered enough when people start looking at settlement agreements. So that's always something I encourage clients to look into. The other thing too is just more time, more complexity. So, pensions, for example, are extremely valuable, almost to the point where they could be worth over, $1 million if someone has worked at a state pension, a teacher's pension. It's, extremely lucrative. Don't forget, they've been paying into this and not to Social Security. So if you don't get a piece of that pension, you may not be entitled to anything. So it's really important that pensions are valued properly by an expert, an accountant, or a pension valuation to really make sure that it's being valued properly. You can also receive a piece of the pension, that's prorated for the time that you were married, that they were working. So that's something that is really complex, and I would encourage you to bring in experts on that. Often overlooked too is executive comp. Again, if you're over 50, you could have a spouse, or you may be in an executive comp, an executive position, where you're getting, options or restricted stock, other benefits, membership, travel benefits. So, again, these are all things that, may not be worth anything when the settlement's reached, but over time they're going to vest and they will be worth something. So you always need to look. And I will tell you, there are a lot of cases where the spouse that does have unvested options do not declare them. So, that's something that we always look for. Health insurance is something that's really important, especially, over 50, where you might not be working. You want to make sure that any settlement agreement takes into consideration health insurance. And also, long-term care. Do you have a long-term care policy, or does that make sense to maybe build that into the settlement agreement? And then I think the final thing, and I think the most challenging, is when a spouse does give up their career to take care of the family, and how we value that. So if the spouse is working and they've been working at a career for 25 years and you may have given it up 15 years ago, your entry level, when let's say maybe you decide to go back to work, certainly isn't the same as somebody that's been working for 25 years. You'll have to almost restart. So, and that becomes really difficult. How do we account for that? So maybe you'd ask for a higher percentage of the assets, or, something to, to try to make up for the fact that your earning potential of the two spouses is not similar. So, again, these are all things that, complexities, of a gray divorce, and, financial considerations, and encourage you to, bring in experts, because, as over time, everything, gets your asset base and what you're dividing becomes more complicated. All right, so I think I'm going to hand it over now to Kate.
Thanks, Barb. I know there's so much good information in there. I think the major difference for a gray divorce versus a younger divorce is a lot of financial. And you're going to hear that. You've heard it from Barb. You're going to hear it pretty much from everyone else tonight. So I thought I would talk a little bit more about the impact on your kids. So adult kids or children who are maybe older, high school age, there's a few things that I think are different and that I've seen come up as an issue. So the first thing I want to talk about was college costs. So either you may have kids in college or about to go into college, and thinking about how you saved for them, what your plan might have been. Maybe our plan is always we're going to split the cost with our child, or we're going to fully pay for college. Well, now that there's a divorce, finances are all different, right? The future is very different. There's a division of retirement benefits. So you might have to switch up a game plan for college expenses. Obviously not something you might want to do, but it's something worth considering. You might need to deviate from that plan as to what you might have always come up with. The other two pieces that I wanted to talk about are about relationships with the older children, or maybe again, your adult children. So I think it's pretty obvious that when you have small children in a divorce, you try your best to shield them from the details of what's going on. Everyone kind of knows telling minor children about divorce details, there's nothing good that can come of that. But I think people forget about that when your kids are older and more mature. Of course, they could handle maybe more of the details. And I often hear people sharing those with their adult children, almost like you would, a sibling or a good friend. But I've seen that really cause problems in families. So as much as you can, try to steer clear of sharing the details with your children, even if they're mature enough to handle it, even if they're asking. Really sheltering them from the details will be worth it in the long run. I've seen adult children feel like they need to pick sides and be loyal to one parent over the other. And again, in that moment, you might appreciate that given the facts of your case, maybe. But again, I think long term, that is really detrimental to the kids. Always encouraging them to have a good relationship with the other parent is good for you. It's always going to come back and reward you twofold, I should say. So I think keeping in mind that no matter what the age is, kids are always impacted by their parents' divorce. And the kids that deal with it the best are when they see their parents are doing well, they're doing okay. And they're kind of being sheltered from the little details of everything. I mean, obviously, big picture, they need to know what's happening. They need to know, maybe I'm moving here, or this is what's going on for holidays, things like that. The things you can share with them like that is always okay. It's intimate details like, dad did this or mom did this. Keeping that out of their kind of space is a good idea. Next thing I think about is grandkids. So gray divorces often have grandchildren, and they're used to be known as, grandma with the kids and showing up to everything and being really involved in their lives. And so making sure that the other grandparent still has a good relationship with the grandkids, because you're going to have to see them right at birthday parties and soccer games and all those fun things that you have been doing anyway. So maintaining that good co-grandparent relationship is really important. And again, maybe not something right on the forefront of what you're thinking about, but it's an important piece of the puzzle. As much as you can minimize the impact on the grandkids, your children, the better. So just a few non-financial related issues I thought was worth mentioning tonight. And obviously, any questions you guys have, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. I'm happy to chat about that. And so that's my highlight. I don't want to take up too much time from the other financial information that you're going to get tonight. So I'll pass this off to Laura. She's going to be able to talk to you more about real estate, things to think about. So thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Great information there. Good evening, everyone. So I'm here just to chat about a lot of the time the biggest asset that comes up in this particular situation, of course. And the earlier that we're pulled in, the better, because a lot of the times the conversations come around the home and whether someone's staying in the home, or is you buying out the other party, or does the property need to be sold altogether, and the assets and that monies need to be divided however you have that kind of in the decree or negotiating. So a lot of the times Kate will be reaching out, needing a dollar amount of what their home's worth so they can have that information when they are in that discussion, going back and forth with their ex, and kind of trying to finalize everything. So the earlier the better of pulling us in and having that number kind of really definitely helps set apart. Also is just the conversation of, if parties are going to be selling the house and looking elsewhere, do both of those parties need to look to kind of find housing? And depending on what type of market that we're in, that's really crucial as well, is kind of setting what that timeline looks like, of just that expectation. If one party needs to go find housing, if we're obviously in a market that we've been right now, where it's been a pretty heavy seller's market, sometimes it might be challenging to find something, and or vice versa. So sometimes if we're in a different type of market, where it's worthwhile perhaps waiting a little bit longer until the market, so until things change. So that's also part of it. So just kind of where we are, in a realistic kind of economy and what type of market that we're in, might be just the timing might just be, worthwhile for both parties, just to really assess and see what's the best decision at that point as well, especially at that kind of time in their life, where, again, that just makes that a big decision factor. So some of the definitely big things for sure on that kind of process as well. And then also just kind of getting the house ready for the market. So a lot of the conversations that I'm having with both, because one might be still in the house, one might be out of the house. What do we need to do to get the house ready? So it's having those conversations, because sometimes there's some monetary contributions that need to kind of come into factor for getting the house ready. So that sometimes also kind of being in the negotiations or part of the divorce decree, of who's splitting what, if someone's paying for this to happen to the house or get this ready for the house, etc. So a lot of the times we're kind of having that accumulating monies as well. That's still kind of, again, being part of kind of a part of the actual plan in place and taken into factor. So because that's very important, right? So a lot of the times if we're selling the house, big thing is that they want to get that top dollar for it for many reasons. So a lot of times we're working with them for a couple of months if needed, to kind of get that house ready and kind of get it staged, etc. So we can really kind of get that top dollar appropriately for the parties appropriately. So just a lot of things that we're kind of seeing out there. It can be very emotional, right? You're going to have someone that might be much more attached to the property than the other. So it's, it's just kind of dealing with that and kind of taking all those into considerations, because it can be very emotional for one party versus the other. So it's just really, kind of having those conversations and talking them through it, because again, if kids have been there, they're all grown now, and they're, like Kate touched on, and adult children now, and they could be very emotional at that point as well. So it's really just kind of starting having those conversations ahead of time, and how we can kind of just help ease that process and whatnot. And just if someone is going to be kind of keeping that house and buying them out, is having those conversations with Renee, which she'll touch on, of making sure that you don't get yourself into a position that you're not able to. So be able to kind of take over that property and whatever mortgage is left. So the earlier that we're pulled into the mix is just a lot better all around, when people are amicable as well, and still able to kind of have conversations about all these type of tricky financials before things start to spiral down, and hopefully don't go that route, but sometimes, as we know, they do. So it's much easier to have the conversations around a lot of these financials when parties are talking nicely with each other and getting along, and kind of trying to amicably get through the divorce smoothly. So again, here for any questions, so please feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A. Okay, and I'll pass it over to Renee. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everybody. Welcome again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about mortgages and, how it pertains to gray divorce. So Laura had some great points. This is an emotional decision, right? Our homes are where we raised our children. There's lots of memories there. And it's one of the bigger decisions that you'll need to make as you're navigating this process. Do we want to keep the house? Do we want to sell the house? Do we want to live in it and own it, co-own it for a length of time, whatever that might look like. And so Laura mentioned getting a value on the house, right? So one of the biggest parts of the divorce process is the division of assets, right? So we talked about the financial piece of that and those assets that are involved, but your house is one of those assets as well. And there's a lot of equity out there, right? our houses are worth a lot more now than when we purchased them. And so there's lots of considerations. So getting either an appraisal or a CMA through a realtor like Laura to be able to give you a value of the house, right? You need to know the value of the house to know what your options are as far as one spouse potentially wanting to keep the house, or if we're going to sell the house and what kind of proceeds will look like. So, deciding, how do you decide? Again, we know that emotions come into it, but we try to keep the emotion out of it and look at the financial side of it. So once we have a value to the house, and we potentially know what is owed on any existing mortgages, then we can determine the equity in the home. And it's that equity that would be split. And, depending how the split, what that number is, if it's 50-50 or something different, but knowing what that equity is super important early on. And then if one of you wants to keep the house, that's where we talk about, you need to make sure that you're qualified for that mortgage. So, what typically happens, most people still have mortgages on their homes, even if they're 50 plus. We see typically there are still mortgages. And so if you're both on that mortgage and one of you wants to keep the house, likely you'd have to refinance that mortgage to remove what we call the departing spouse. And so in order to keep that mortgage in your name only, you need to know if you qualify for that mortgage. And that's where I come in. So we would take an application from you early in the process, because we want to see, what do the numbers look like today? What's your income? What are your expenses? What's your credit look like? And so it's hard to, emotionally, you may want to keep the house, but financially, it may not be the right thing. So the earlier you know that, once you've spoken with a lender, we can tell you, whether you qualify and for how much you qualify. And as you progress through the divorce process, if there's going to be support owed or received, if there's going to be buyouts of equity in the home. And so we can tell you what you qualify for. So when you are talking with your financial person or your attorney, if you're going to your attorney and saying, I want to keep the house, well, great, your attorney you're paying them, they're going to work for you, and they're going to negotiate on your behalf to keep the house. But we've got some financial things that we need to take care of before that, so that we know that that is even an option financially for you. A couple of things I wanted to mention when we talk about selling a home and the capital gains implications. So there are some rules around that. So capital gains is something when you earn equity in a house. So, if you bought your house for $200,000 and you sold it for $500,000, there is a gain there. And if you sell the house, you likely would owe some tax. But there are some exemptions involved, and they're whether you are single or whether you're married comes into play when the home is sold and what those exemptions are. So again, talking to somebody like Barb or a CPA to determine, what the tax implications would be for that. And one last thing I wanted to mention is when we look to qualify you for a mortgage, whether that's, keeping the existing home or potentially purchasing a new home, when we're looking at your income to qualify you, I know I've had lots of retirees call me and say, I don't have any income. And they think of income only as, a job. I'm working and receiving a paycheck. But from a lender's perspective, income can be anything. It can be a pension, an annuity, Social Security. It can be child support. It can be alimony. We can also use assets, and rather than using income, we can use assets. So if there's lots of monies available in a retirement account, we can use that as income to. You don't have to cash it in or use it, but we can use that as income to qualify you. So there's lots of different options. And then lastly, I wanted to mention a program that is specific to seniors. So 60 and older in New Hampshire, 62 and older in Massachusetts. Some states will go down to 55, but it's rare. But there is a mortgage program which would allow you to borrow the equity in the house. If you, for example, wanted to keep the home and some monies were owed to the departing spouse, you can borrow the equity to pay the departing spouse, but you wouldn't have a monthly mortgage payment. You can also purchase a home with these products. So we've seen it a lot with gray divorce where, you know, you're going from one household to two households and potentially not a lot of income, you know, depending on your age. And so these programs will allow us to borrow equity from one of the homes, give it to the other party, the departing party, and they can use that to purchase a home. And again, no monthly mortgage payments. So there's some great programs out there for seniors. So that was all I wanted to talk with you about tonight. Again, there's lots of options, and you know, you want to build your team and make sure that you've got the right players on the team to help you through the process. It'll make it that much easier. So talk to us early in the process, and you can set up appointments with any of us to chat. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Robin.
Hi again. Thank you, Renee. So yeah, a lot of information. So I know this is a really vulnerable time, and we got a section here to go. So take a deep breath, and I know that you know, you guys are here tonight, so that's a huge step in getting support you need to move forward successfully. Definitely, as you build your team, that's going to help you have better outcomes, feel more financially confident, and avoid some of the mistakes that you can make. So with that, I'm going to launch into the financial component post-divorce. So, you know, you've gone through all of that hard work, you know, and I am generally involved in the process pre-divorce, just to help, you know, all of the parties kind of come up with the right plan. But once you kind of step over that line, you've signed the decree, it's time to get divorced financially. And, you know, that is, you know, you're not done, right? You might feel like you're done, but to some extent, you're just beginning this new chapter of your financial life. And it does take some energy to get things moving in the right direction for yourself. So what I would recommend there is, you know, again, you know, if you're able to do it yourself, great. But if not, really pull together and, you know, talk to a financial advisor that can help you move all of those assets that are in the decree into your name. There are many things that you need to do with retirement accounts and just regular brokerage accounts. So I'm going to talk through some of the different types of accounts tonight. I have a chart that hopefully will make it a little easier and that I can send to you if that would be helpful. But getting the assets into your name is an important part of, you know, knowing what your resources are to provide you with the lifestyle that you need to support yourself and possibly your family. So I'm really going to start there because, as all of the women had mentioned, it's often that you are going from, you know, double income to one income. And so one of the first things when someone comes into my office that we work on is, where is your income coming from? And so I'm going to share a slide. Just give me a second to pull that up. Sorry, I need to share my screen. Hold on 1 second, here we go. Okay. So hold on, and there we go. Okay, so we're going to just start with the left-hand column, which goes through some of the income sources that you have to fund your lifestyle once you're on your own making these decisions. So as ladies mentioned, you might be receiving, per your divorce decree, some alimony to help you pay for your expenses. And I've put a column, whether it's taxable and some special considerations to help you. Feel like it might be a little overwhelming to go through every word tonight, but basically it's not tax deductible and not taxable, not deductible currently. Child support, not taxable. You may be getting pension or Social Security benefits. So we need to look at that as a bucket potentially that would come out and show up on your tax return. As Renee mentioned, and Laura, you might have a sale of a marital home, which there are some exemptions that you can use, but you might use some of those proceeds to fund your lifestyle or to invest. So that's a bucket that potentially you would have access to. So really, we're trying to figure out what is it that you're getting and what assets can you pull a retirement income or an income for yourself as you're post-divorce. So you may be working still, depending on your age, or you may be considering working, doing some consulting income, or part-time work, or maybe going back full-time, depending on your situation. And those are always subject to ordinary income taxes and payroll taxes. And then some of my clients get rental properties as part of their divorce settlement. And rental properties could be a wonderful option for income, but they also can be a little stressful if you don't have the capacity to maintain it and manage it. So it also could be an asset that you could sell. So those are some of the main sources that you would identify as income sources to fund your lifestyle. The other component of that is your investment bucket. And that's the next slide. So, you might have bank accounts, you might have just, brokerage accounts at Charles Schwab or Fidelity or Merrill Lynch, any of those brokerage services. You might have retirement accounts, 401ks, 403bs. So you have this big compilation of accounts that you're getting. So you go through your settlement, and the first thing you do is you take an inventory of all of those accounts. So you have an inventory of all the income you're entitled to, and then an inventory of all the accounts. And one of the most confusing things is, when you're looking at your brokerage statements, is what is this exactly? Can I just pull money from this account? So I've tried to summarize it here for you in terms of whether it's a taxable account, whether it's a tax deferred account, which is a retirement account. If you look under examples, you can see the types. So traditional IRA, 401k, 403b, a SEP, IRA, those are all tax deferred. So they're considered retirement accounts. And then we have tax-free accounts, which is generally a Roth or a Roth 401k, which you would contribute to at your employer, or maybe you were awarded that in a settlement. So let's just go across the top first. So in a taxable account, if you were looking at that as a source of income, so you do have access to it. So if you look all the way on the right, so there's no penalty to access those funds in a regular taxable brokerage account or savings account at your bank. The tax treatment on contributions, I'm not going to focus on today, just given our time restriction. I'm really going to focus on tax treatment on withdrawals, is when you would need to create an income from there or take distributions to fund a short-term goal, pay expenses, pay legal bills, whatever it is. So the tax treatment on a taxable account is capital gains, and you're also paying taxes on interest and dividends and capital gains annually. So let's just talk about that. Inside your taxable account, you might have some mutual funds, maybe you have some individual stocks, maybe you have some of your money in cash earning interest. So you're going to pay taxes annually on that interest. You're going to be taxes on the dividends from the stocks in that account. And then if anything is sold within that account, you may need to pay capital gains on the sale. And that tax treatment, so knowing what you own and understanding how that will impact your taxes is a big component of figuring out how to create that income stream for yourself. Which bucket do I take from? So that's where working with, a financial advisor along with your CPA is so critical in doing this right, so that you are preserving as much of your money as you can. On the tax deferred side, if you wanted to take an IRA distribution, maybe your only asset is a big IRA, which we see a lot also, or you're getting a quadro of your ex-husband's 401k or 403b or pension. Those dollars are coming over and they're all considered tax deferred, and every dollar that comes out of those accounts is fully taxable as ordinary income. So that could be, depending on your tax situation, a very expensive way to fund your lifestyle. So again, we need to kind of understand your tax situation to figure out if that's the right bucket to take from. And if you're not age 59 and a half, then there are also potentially penalties on taking a 10% penalty on taking money out of that account. So definitely consulting your team before doing something like that. There is one exception, and thank you, Barb, for helping me with that, is on a quadro. So if you do have a quadro that you've got awarded a portion of your husband's 401k or pension, and you need a legal document to actually get that money in your name, and that's called a quadro. And so you would have a one-time chance to take money out of that 401k or pension via a quadro without penalty. Once the quadro is done and executed and the money's in your name, that no longer applies. So that's really, if that's your only asset and you need to pull, making sure that you know that when that quadro is being done is important. So that's where the team comes in place. You don't have to do it alone. And then lastly, tax-free assets. Those are Roth accounts, and those are great accounts to be awarded in the settlement because they're tax-free. So you can take money out tax-free, and the rules around pre-age 59 and a half are listed there. So that gives you, that's where we like to put our clients' retirement, long-term assets, and put some really great growth assets, and so they can take it out later on. But you may need it now. So just evaluating which bucket. So is it going to be some of those income sources on page 1, or do you need to pull money from your investment accounts to really make your life work? So knowing your numbers and knowing what you have and the tax piece of it is so critical in creating a solid plan to move forward. So the next 2 slides that I have are around understanding investment risk. And this really goes to, clients come in and I don't think they always understand, if they've not managed the investments on their own at all, then they're not really understanding some of the risks involved in what they have. And even if they are managed some of the finances, it's still, it's an emotional time, when you're going through this process, and you may want to just go, lay on your couch and relax and not deal with it. But a lot of these things are time sensitive. So let's just go through them one by one. So there can often be a mismatch between your financial needs and the investments that you're receiving. So that's where the work with Barb and Kate and the group is really important to get the settlement correct. Because if you need, a lot of cash to provide your lifestyle for you and your family, that's different if you're, in good shape and you have enough assets and you're really wanting them to grow. So really making sure that you have the right set of assets for your needs. The next one is misalignment of risk tolerance. So I often will see people come in with a taxable brokerage account and they want to pull money out, but the money is in concentrated stock positions that carry with it a high risk. So that, maybe their spouse worked at one of the big tech firms and the stock, went from 2 to, 500 or something. And now, it's very risky to hold that stock long term. And it really doesn't meet generally the needs of divorced women who are trying to create security, who are trying to create income. So making sure that you identify what's in these accounts so that they can rebalance them to more fit what you need. There can also be illiquid investments like rental real estate. I mentioned that earlier, but private equity, what are you getting? And, how does that fit with your need? Coming up with a plan. If you're, post-divorce and these are the assets that you have, coming up with a plan of, what are my options? When can I sell that? What's the right timing? All of those things will help you create financial security. And so working with someone on a plan to see what your options are is very important in creating that financial plan for yourself. I've talked a little bit about hidden tax burdens. So, it's every asset is different, whether it be your house, investments, rental real estate, all of those things are taxed differently. And so having a financial advisor that understands the tax components is critical to making good decisions about that stuff. So lack of investment knowledge, it definitely can feel overwhelming. And so one of the things that we work on when clients walk in the door is, what needs to be done now, what can go on the soon list, and what can wait till later. And so, maybe the house can wait till later. Maybe, you have enough cash and, you're feeling okay about your income stream. And you don't need to make the decision about the house. You can focus on getting the assets transferred, doing the quadro. So what is it for you in your situation that is a now issue? What can you put on the back burner a bit to create space and to have you really, I do a lot of work in financial transitions and helping women really move forward successfully through these transitions. And so, creating that space for yourself is so important. So I would highly recommend the now, sooner, later technique. Holding too much cash is, it can really go both ways, right? Not having enough or holding too much. But holding too much cash really isn't going to serve your needs long term. And so coming up with an investment plan, maybe you need more now. And then as you get comfortable, you can invest more for your long-term financial goals. So just coming up with a plan so that not too much sits for too long is going to help you be more successful. And then I think with gray divorce, you're kind of not having enough time to recover too, is the other thing. And so really, paying attention to getting those things invested and contributing to retirement accounts if you can, if you're still working, will help. And then longevity risk, because we outlive our, husbands. And so, just planning for that, that's where creating a financial plan is so important, because it will help you align your spending with your long-term outlook. So those are the risks. I'm going to spend 2 minutes talking about the ways to solve that. Happy to share any of this with you if it's a lot of information. But you want to define, the future, your financial future. And you may not know everything today, but starting with your income needs, lifestyle adjustments, and goals that you might have is a good place to start. Your risk comfort. Are you, going to lose sleep if markets do what they've been doing this year? So understanding what you'd be comfortable with from a risk perspective on the investment side, which may be very different than how your money is currently invested. Maintaining liquidity for stability. So that's, sorry, somebody's leaving my office. Sorry about the ding. But that's the emergency fund, making sure you have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund because things come up. Boilers go if you own a house, kids have needs, health things come up. So just, maintain a little extra for those things. Be tax smart with asset sales. We talked a lot about that. Rebalance. So once you know your plan and have a good understanding of the tax components, readjust your portfolio so that it can be set up for your financial plan and to fund your goals and lifestyles. You want to diversify, make sure you're diversified globally to reduce risk and help with your security. And then seek expert guidance, which we've all talked about tonight. You don't have to do it alone. It's a lot. There's a lot of support out there. And if not us, we have so many other resources. If there's something else that you need, or you're looking at working with someone else, please reach out. We're glad to provide any assistance there. So thank you so much. Oh, I'm going to stop sharing and then have everyone else come on and we can take some questions.
I do see that we have one of the attendees has their hand raised. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see we don't have the ability to unmute you. But if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A and you can type your question there and we'll be able to see that.
I think something that, Robin and everyone has emphasized and why we appear as a team is, I can't convey enough, especially in a gray divorce, is assembling your team. It may seem overwhelming and, oh, just another person, another cost. But just consider the savings that you can, if you don't, let's say you make a mistake with the pension, you make a mistake and you find out you're sitting in, 100% of a company and it just is now at half its value, as Robin was talking about. There's more ways for you to lose money if you don't assemble a team than that justifies the cost of adding more people and specialists, because that's what you need when you're looking at some of these instruments and portfolios and your houses that are a large percentage of your marital assets.
Yeah, and it can be overwhelming if you've never had to find someone to help you before. I think that's, if you've not been the one to seek that kind of assistance, or maybe, your husband did it all himself and didn't have any professional advice. And so we see that a lot, and it's a lot of decisions. It can be extremely overwhelming to not only have to think about all of this pre-divorce settlement and then having to think about managing it on your own afterward. So a lot of self-care and love. And I know that you are absolutely not alone. It's normal to feel that way. And, just, take deep breaths and get the support you need.
One question. In the case of multiple property ownership, marital home, second home, and investment property, where you want to sell all but the marital home so that you can buy out the soon-to-be ex, can you offer guidance on timing of all of this? My assumption is selling the properties while married is beneficial, but would love to hear perspective.
I think a lot of it depends too on the tax ramifications of selling it. So if one spouse takes on a piece of property, let's say that's worth 500,000, and they sell it, once it's in their name, they may have a tax liability, especially if it's not the primary home. So it probably would be easier, although, I mean, again, every situation's unique. But that's something you'd want to think about is if you don't do it as a married couple, you know, what might be some tax sensitivities around selling investment properties.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
So I've got another question here. For the case when considering receiving 401k funds from soon-to-be ex for the down payment of a house, it sounds like it's possible during the quadro without penalty. What about tax implications?
Yeah, so it would still be fully taxable at the ordinary income, federal and state rate. So, you know, here in New Hampshire, we have no state tax on that. But so whatever your ordinary income tax rate is, would, yeah.
You do have the opportunity to take a one-time distribution, and it's really important that you do it right, where you don't have to pay the penalty. So when you're under 60 and you take a distribution, typically you're charged a 10% penalty, but you do have through getting a divorce and receiving, and it's just 401k, it's not IRA, you can take a one-time distribution that's subject to income tax, but not to the penalty.
I think
And
it's
it's a
pension
use
too,
it
is
or
that
lose
right?
it. Excuse me?
Pension as well, correct?
I thought it was just a 401k, but I'm not positive.
Well, we will solve that.
Yeah.
But I think this person's question was around the 401k.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully that answered your question.
I don't see any other questions in the Q&A.
All right. Well,
I
thank you
know it's
all
a
so
lot of
much for
information, right?
attending.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a lot. So we'll send a recording out of the webinar, so you can, if you can feel free to follow up with any of us if you would like any of the materials or anything, any questions that you may have.
Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.